fuck that. I was like, I'm not hiding. If you really want to go to the next level, you got to take that safety net away and you got to jump and see what happens. You're up here feeling like something is going out that's really positive, and then someone just cleans the legs from under you. Oh my God. This is everything that I'm not, that I've been told I am. So my whole journey really is about connecting to people and tapping into those around me. And I'll take a pause now. I've had so much help. That's where it all started. If I'm not a sports person, what am I? When you put your face to social media, you're not just a brand. It becomes way more personal. Everything about how you present yourself is judged. That's just the reality of it. Every single time I create a piece of content, is there a value in it for somebody? You actually cannot perform at your best if you're not investing in yourself. That's what matters. That's the key element to this.
Series 8 of the Dig podcast. I can't believe it, guys. We are over 250,000 downloads. The growth of the podcast has been amazing. But I just have one thing I'm asking of you guys today. If you love listening to the Dig podcast and you love all the new guests each week, then I'm asking if you could hit subscribe or follow. So if you listen on Apple or Spotify, if you could hit follow, and if you watch on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. It means the podcast reaches more people. When I reach out, people actually have heard of the Dig podcast, they know about it, and they're more willing to be a guest. And then I'm able to bring even more actionable advice to you guys. So it's really, really it really helps the podcast grow. So I'm asking for your help on that point today, and I just can't wait to dive into this series, and I can't wait for you to hear from our next guest. I am joined today by Daniel Davey. I'm so nervous that I'm going to call him Davey. Has that ever happened, Daniel?
Yeah,
so because it's like two men's names in it. Anyway, it's happened to me a few times in the podcast, so hopefully I haven't jinxed myself. Daniel Davey sitting right beside me, and for those who don't know him, he is a performance nutritionist, and he's a lot of things, but he is a performance nutritionist and a performance director working in professional sport and business. He's from Sligo, but he's based in Dublin. Lucky for me, because we are recording in the beautiful Dillon Hotel in Dublin today, so I'm able to speak to him face to face, which is always a bonus. He's the author of the best-selling books, Eat Up, Raise Your Game and Eat Up, The Next Level, and co-creator of the collagen supplement with Kinetica Sport. He has worked with Dublin Senior football team and Leinster Rugby team over the past decade. Now, he was a part of the Dublin backroom team that won a record 6 All-Ireland titles in a row, and Leinster Rugby backroom team as well. And they also won 4 straight pro, 14 titles. I have all this written in front of me because I don't know all these sports accolades and all, and they also won the Champions Cup in 2018. So anybody that's into sport, no, that's a very big deal, and Daniel was part of that whole movement. So in 2022, though, like all of us, things evolve, you change, you find different ways. He decided to commit to his own business full time, and he moved on from professional sports. And that's like a big thing as well for people who are listening. Like, you do change, and sometimes you have to take different paths, and then you can be afraid that maybe it's not the right way. But we're going to talk about all of that on the podcast today. He still does work, though, as a consultant to athletes in various sports. So he's a founder, and this is maybe where some of you might know him, of the platform Davey Nutrition, which was founded actually in 2014. But since then, he's built a very successful online business, which is based on education, webinars, consultation, events, podcasts. He's right here beside me. Commercial partners in the food and supplement space. He's doing a lot online. And he now has staff as well. So that's another thing that people, transition from just being by themselves and then having a staff member. I'm not going to talk all about him because he's not going to have nothing left to say if I don't stop talking. But he had so much going on. He wants to be recognised as a worldwide leader in the space of performance, health and nutrition. That's what we all want, to be recognised as a leader in our field, our niche. He has over 150,000 followers on social media, and that's not flipping easy to manage or to actually build up. So we're going to ask him, dig deep about how he did that. Most notably, he's got 112,000 on Instagram, which is a very engaged following. I don't want to leave it out because he sent me this in his bio, but he played elite level Gaelic football himself and won an All-Ireland title 2016. It's nice to drop that in, isn't it? And Daniel with his club, Ballybowdens and Endas. His purpose is simple, and it's about helping people find the winning moments in sport and life. So it's that life bit there as well, because we can't separate our jobs from our lives. Isn't that right, Tanya?
That is right. I think that's the most comfortable I've ever been in somebody describing my bio.
Well, tell me why that is, so I can replicate it for everybody. Why was that comfortable? Because sometimes people hate to hear all the things that they've achieved. What happened there if it made that good?
I think it was because of you went through it in different phases with a slightly different tone, and I think this is the truth. I actually think that you cared about reading it and maybe understanding it, and most of the time it's just read out. It's kind of a tick the box. So I actually appreciate that.
Well, I did read it, because when you were telling me, when we had our call and you said all the things that you've done, which have been amazing, like working with those teams, and then you talked about the fact you had to move away from that. I always selfishly think about my own situation, like, oh my God, I was doing, and then I had to move away from that, and how'd that make me feel? So that's probably why I read it, because I was actually thinking of my own circumstances. And everybody does that, don't they? Especially when they listen to podcasts, they're like, oh, that's happened to me.
Yeah, of course. And that's what we want to do. We want people to think about their own circumstances. But it isn't. I think, it's an Irish thing as well. We're not comfortable with... there's always a yeah, but when we talk about our achievements. But you just you referenced being an athlete in there, and we'll talk a bit about this, but that means a lot as well, because that's where it all started. It was me. I think about playing sport. I think about being a 4-year-old, a 10-year-old, and what it felt like wanting to play sport at the highest level, and what it took to get wherever I was. And then if I'm not a sports person, what am I?
That's about, like, oh my God, there's a whole conversation there. So let's talk about that. So people are listening that don't know who you are, the people that don't. Where did this all start? Tell me about the early days and how this all happened. The grind, the hustle, the dream, all that.
Yeah, I guess I'll condense some of it, because while it doesn't bring us straight up to where we're at right now, it's still awful important. And that is that I'm from a real rural background. I'm from parents who are extremely hardworking. And even part of the story is that my dad was moved out of home when he was 12 years of age to a distant relation to mind a small farm. And at 12, managing a house and farming, and like listening to those stories when you're growing up, it actually makes you feel like you want to work hard and you want to be independent, because he was independent and you look up to him. So I took on a small little farm project even myself at the age of 11 or 12. I had my own sheep enterprise, and I was influenced very heavily by being a part of rural Ireland, a small farm, the work that's associated with it, both grandparents being dairy farmers. We grew our own food. And then as it evolved, I suppose I was extremely competitive in sport. So that drove my interest in performance. And then I realized from a very, very young age, from the age of about 7, that nutrition was a big element of performing well. So that drove an interest in that. I was from that rural background. I started to recognize, whether it be an animal or a person, what allows them to develop strength and speed and, perform well. So you move through life, you play a sport. Those are the types of things that interest me. I was terrible in school. School was traumatic for me. Failed maths in my Leaving Cert. Never really identified as an academic. Was at one stage, I was in foundation maths. I was put to the back. Didn't even know where my maths book was. But somehow, I'm not really sure how. Somebody mentioned to me quite recently, do you think, that you have some form of learning disability that may be numerical, like numerical dyslexia? Which has really struck a chord with me because of how much I struggle in that space. But I scraped 36.5 or 37% of my leaving cert, and the principal looked over it and he said, I think you've got a chance here. You might just have enough to scrape a pass. I did that, had the points on just like to the number 325 or something like that to do agricultural science in college. And then I went in, and I think this is a really important part. I was surrounded by people who were interested in similar things, who were incredibly supportive. So my whole journey really is about connecting to people and tapping into those around me, because no matter what I've done, and I'll take a pause now, I've had so much help. So much help.
From your peers, from your network group, from who?
Everyone. But my dad would have said, you want to hear me talk a lot about him, because there was a lot of stability created in my life because of him. He passed away 2 years ago. But he said one of my biggest strengths was that I wasn't afraid to ask for help. And I didn't know what he was talking about. But you realise as you go on in life, people are not great at asking for help. So when I was terrible at maths, I got on well with people who I didn't get on with them because they were good at maths, but I just happened to get on with them and they were happy to help me. You know, so I would have, like, there was people in my class in college who would have helped me prepare for exams, and I would have accepted that help. That's kind of what I'm talking about.
And that message is one that I presume you live by now, right, to this day, of asking for help. People fight, like you did touch on that, very hard, because they see that it makes them look stupid. What would you say to people that are listening, that, like, there's people actually, as you know, don't know how to do things within their business and they're afraid to ask because it makes them look like they're less of a business person, in inverted commas. What would you say to them people?
Everybody will struggle with different things within business. You know, some people will be exceptional at accounting. Some people will be brilliant at the forecasting. Some people will be good at marketing who they are. I think it's about recognizing, and again, we're going to talk about this. It's like, do you understand you? Do you understand what you're good at and where are your weak points? And the thing that I can reference consistently from high performing environments, the thing that I learned is that we have to look at ourselves from a 360 perspective, and we have to understand what we're good at, but we also really need to understand where our weaknesses are. And that's what the best of the best do. They identify the key things that they need to work on, and they systematically get help. They ask the people who have the expertise to support them on that journey. And that is fundamental. I remember pivotal points, captains, vice captains, coming to me at different stages, and they say, here's my technical coach. Here's my strength coach. Here's the backs. Here's the forwards. Here's nutrition. Here's sleep. I need those pillars in every aspect if I'm going to be at my best. And like, that's what you begin to recognize yourself. Where do I need help? I made a call on the way in to somebody, and I didn't know whether they were going to give me the answers or not, but I'm going to talk to them and see, can they give me a bit of a guide on like some of the things that's coming at me right now? You know, I'm always actually thinking, who can I have a conversation with about these things?
And you're not afraid to lift the phone, send an email, reach out. You're not afraid to do that?
I've been doing that since I was a child, so it comes a little bit easier. And again, that's a big thing. We build in these habits over the course of and these tendencies or patterns or whatever over the course of life. And that part of it does honestly come quite easily to me, because there's not an agenda. When I made that call, it's not like, I wonder what I can get out of it. It's just a conversation. And if you think about it, you have to start having that conversation. And that's what I tell young people who come to me, even from a career perspective, all the time. What do you really understand about the space? Do you have a good in-depth understanding about your space? And if you don't, who are you going to speak to about it? Or what are you going to read about it? Where are your resources? And actually, the best, the people who have come through my business, even from a very young age, they've stepped in front of me with a portfolio of their work and questions that they want to ask. And I know instantly if somebody has the potential from the first conversation.
Because of how they present themselves, the questions they ask,
how they're prepared, how they've thought about the area and the space. I will always ask when somebody comes to me and they want, because I'm in the public eye. There's a lot of young practitioners out there. There's a lot of people interested in performance. They watch the games on TV. They might play themselves. They say me, who's he worked with. I will know very, very quickly when somebody says they want to work with me. If I ask them, what do I do? And if they tell me, I work with Dublin, or I've worked at Dublin, I've worked with Leinster, and it stops, like I can tell straight away that they just haven't done their homework.
So for people that are listening, what is the key there when they want to seek out opportunity? They need to have their homework done first about what they're actually entering into and what they need to ask, and what they're, if you're going to be put in front of somebody, what do I actually need to ask them? Is that what you're saying? Is that what the messages are?
Who have you spoken to? What conversations have you had yourself? I know it's such an obvious thing, but like, what do you know? If I'm the director or founder of a business do you want to work with, and all you've looked at is my Instagram account, that is just like, that is the tip of the iceberg. Where did this? I hope you don't mind me saying this, but beforehand we're having a chat, and Mary mentioned my previous social media account. She started talking about Food Flicker. Food Flicker started in 2012. That was the seed. Mary referenced that. I can have a completely different conversation with Mary. That's somebody who's, knows a little bit more about my journey. But if you really wanted to know about my path, it's all out there.
Yeah.
You need to do a little bit of reading about it. It's all out there. But having the attention to do that bit of work tells me a lot about who you are. Definitely
Key learnings there for people, because people are ill prepared sometimes when they go into good situations that don't turn out to be good because they didn't do their work. So
I'll give you one quick example.
Okay.
I know you want to move on.
I don't know. I love when people elaborate on the topics.
I'll give you one very good example. And I don't mind giving this example because this girl is going to soar, and she's going to continue to soar. A girl called Heather approached me 3 years ago to do work experience with me, maybe a little bit longer. And I had the conversation with her. She called me like people do. She's very quiet. And she said, I want to work with you. And I asked her why. She didn't really have good answers. And I was like, I need to get off this call. Like, this is completely wasting my time. And I just left it and ended the call. And she messaged me the next day and she said, I'm sorry about that. She said, I didn't give a good account of myself. She said, will you give me a second chance? I'll be properly prepared. I was like, have a chat with this girl again. Like, that's interesting.
That takes
guts
to do that, yeah.
So she came back on the call. She said, I thought a lot about the question, because I asked her, what do you want to do? Why are you contacting me? What do you want to achieve? And she said, all I've wanted to do is work in the space of health and nutrition. It's where I see myself. I am willing to do whatever it takes, right? And that's the cliche, but she said, I'll prove it. I'll show you. So she came on board and she was really quiet. And the first thing I addressed with her, this is the truth, like, this is the first thing I said, if you want to go anywhere, I said, that first account of yourself, you're not going anywhere with that. I said, your tone has to come up. You need to engage with me. And every single time you speak with somebody, you are representing yourself. So every time she answered the phone, she used to say, hello? And I was like, Heather, no. That's not strong enough. That's not what represents you or us as a team. Long story short, she worked so hard. She took on every piece of feedback. She constantly asked me, where am I? Where do you think I'm at? And every time I told her, I gave her really honest feedback. This is strong. So anyway, moving 3.5 years forward, You know, she completed her degree. She was working with the business. I was like, this girl there's so much potential here for where she's at. And then in last April, she contacted me and she said, you know, Danny, I know I was going to go on and do that master's, but I really feel I want to go traveling. I was devastated. I was so disappointed to lose her, but that's what she wanted to do, and that was fine. But in the last 6 weeks or so, maybe it's a little bit longer, she got a huge opportunity with a healthcare provider. You know, a good bit beyond, I would say, where you would think somebody of her experience was ready for. And she called me and she said, you know, I'm preparing for this interview and I want to give a good account of myself. She called everyone, as it turns out, in our stronger network, and even people who I'd introduced her to, they all helped her. She did 5 rounds of interview and she got the job. And it was such a proud moment, because what she's doing, like, we talk about empowerment, like we talk about putting people in a position to live their own lives. Not, you know, you don't want to be dependent on any environment or any people. That's what it's about. She used her skills, she used the network and the connections, and fair play to her. You know, she's going to continue to soar.
It's like you knew who my previous guest was. I was speaking to a guy called Kingsley Aikens, who's all about networking and connections, and he just spoke everything you've just said, like, you know, about reaching out to those networks. You know, like, that's unreal. Fair play to Heather is right, and I'd definitely be looking to follow her and to see her journey and see how she goes. And it takes guts, like you said, and I think when you get knocked down, it takes a lot of resilience to get back up. And we talked on our call, so I gave you a call last week and we're talking about, so your transition from moving from your athlete work with all the teams, and then you had to make that decision to really go fully into your business. That was a big decision for you, wasn't it?
Very scary.
Very scary. So there's people listening, and I know you know Sinead Brady, our career psychologist. She's coming next. Actually, when this goes out, she might have just been on. But anyway, so I've had Sinead in the podcast for, love her so much. But the career aspect, so that was a change in your career, and people who are listening go through this all the time, but they're afraid. So how did you bite the bullet and have the confidence to do that?
Sinead is one of the most powerful people, and you know, I absolutely adore her, and I'm so privileged to have her as a friend. She's been a massive stabilizer. You can talk about network, and she is one of the key people in my life that's just made such a difference to me when I needed someone. Like when we were talking about that conversation earlier, she at some really important points in my life just listened and gave me just some of the most extraordinary guidance. So everybody, this is something that I talk about with clients, people in life, everybody is on their own path and everybody has their own journey within this space. So when you ask me about where I was at, I was developing a lifestyle business for about 2014, 6-7 years, and it was doing quite well. You know, it was doing as a lifestyle business could. I was doing talks. I built a website. I was, I'd written my first book, and all that was part of the business, doing the consultations on the side, and that was fine. But it got to a point, and you know, again, based on conversation, I realized, do you want to have a business? Do you see yourself as a business person? Because what I was doing was, I just had the safety net there all the time. And I did, like, deep down, I knew I could do it and I could make it work. But it was more so, I loved what I did, so much working in team sport. But it reached a point in my tummy, you know, I know it's strange to say tummy, but something deep down said, if you really want to go to the next level, if that's your vision, if that's what you want to achieve, you got to take that safety net away and you got to jump and see what happens. And I just knew, if I was being true to myself, that I had to make that call. But you got to be sensible about it too. You got to create a little bit of security, and that's what I tried to do with my lifestyle business. what does that mean? In really practical terms, it means speaking to an accountant where he'll guide you or she will guide you on what do you need to have in the bank? What systems do you have to have in place? What is realistic about your salary? Like, I'm still taking a very, very small salary. How do you manage your expenses? Like, what are expenses? How do you create a business plan? What's a business plan? What's a marketing plan? It's these things that you hear about that actually mean nothing if it's a lifestyle business. It means everything when it's paying your creche fees and your mortgage and your future, where you actually want to pay your own wages. And it is those things. It is those they are the pillars that allow you to move forward and to create that sense of real security. There's a thing in high performance that's talked about all the time. A guy called Stuart Lancaster, he was the head coach of Leinster for quite a while. He said, the level of your performance will rise or fall depending on your level of preparation. It is exactly the same when it comes to your business.
And then how did you say, right, I know all that and I'm going to do it anyway? Like, what made you take the leap? What was there a deciding thing that you said, right, I'm going to do this on my own, or was it just building the whole time?
It's building, but it's so if we're having this conversation, or I'm having that conversation with them, there's a lot of things that sound so obvious or so simple, but like the type of questions and the type of things that kept going around, like, I'm a big believer in self-talk as part of performance. So self-talk, how do you speak to yourself? What are you saying to yourself? What's your inner story? What conversation do you want to be having with yourself? And when you relate that back to your business, the things that started to emerge for me was, how do I want to spend my time? What does my time mean to me? And how I'm 40 years of age now. I know this sounds like was such a simple thing, but I had a manager that was telling me what to do. I hated it. It's not that I don't want to have a manager or a coach, but I want autonomy. And I had got to a point where I had such a clear picture of what my philosophy was and what I wanted to support people with, that I didn't want to be told how to do that anymore. So that was actually a huge part of, now it's time for me to spread this word in my way, with my systems and my processes, and I want the world to know about them. And this is the big thing. This is and I'm not just building it up. I had worked in professional sport for, the guts of 10 years. In the first 6 months, I was starting to see the true impact of my systems and processes and consultations one-to-one and input with people. I was starting to see a whole different level of impact than I was in sport. And that was the kind of, it was the moment. It was like, I know this isn't perfect. I know this isn't exactly how I want it to be, but that was enough to go, yeah, that was the right call.
And it launched you into a whole new world of the online space.
I was doing that already, but what it does is it just removes the feedback. It actually removes some of the feedback from people who have got a completely different goal, and they're working in a different environment. You're working for people who want to achieve something else. And when you step out on your own, you're doing it for a different purpose and for a different vision. And that removes a layer of, I don't like the word anxiety, but the fear that's associated with it. It just drives you past it because you have to do it.
And whenever you moved into that, the different element of work and life where you were self-employed, and yes, you were in the online space before, but you then became an influencer within your business, which is what now, for people who are listening on Apple and Spotify, he's making this like grimacing face.
Like, hey.
No. No. Let's say this was pride. Every person, I believe, Daniel, that has a business is an influencer. Whether they're online or not, they're influencing people, okay? So they're influencing them to buy into their service, they're influencing them to buy their product. Someone walks into your bricks and mortar, you're influencing them. However, we are in a world where that is now lived out online. Thank God, because it's raising the businesses up, it's giving them opportunity. So when I say that to you, I'm going to work with you now and help you to look at this differently, because you are an influencer. Like, I listen, and we got my mum following you now. I'm like, listen to this man here about food and what way we should be thinking of it. It was Mary, as we talked about before, got me to follow you. So you became but with that came a whole new set of challenges, right? Because we talked on the phone about that. And this is what people are struggling with. And this is why I thought, no, Daniel will be able to talk about this in an emotional way, because it is emotional, but in a realistic way. How do you get over that fact that you actually are an online influencer in your business? I'm not talking about a blogger in inverted commas or someone who, but you are, and we all are if we're online. If you're an influencer, if you're online, that's it, no matter what. So how do you get over what's happened to you when that all happened? How did that affect your business, you, and how can we make this easier for the listener to?
Yeah, my wife hates that I don't answer questions directly. So I will answer your question, but I just want to give a little bit more context to the influencer thing. Like, the influencer, if you use the word influencer, there's there's a perception around what that is. I'm a performance nutritionist, and I am, performance director, like a performance coach. I want people to recognize that performance is a mindset and it's an attitude. And my social media is a creative outlet. And it's really important what context you place it in. Because if I placed it in the influencer space, it's not that I don't like the influence as a word. Of course, I understand there is a positive influence from what you're creating, but it's about the context I or you or whoever it is places on that information, and then why you're doing it and what value that it is providing to the world. If you can give that the right context, it takes a little bit away from, it's social media, because social media is almost a dirty word in society. So how do you get over it?
Recently, I've been doing some research on different conditions, family, things that are going on in different health conditions online, and it's very hard sometimes to find the right information. And definitely my go-to now is Mars Pharmacy. I found Mars online during COVID actually, and started to follow the owner Una and all the unreal advice she was given for everyday issues that we all experience, educating us on things that are going on in everyday life, but we just don't know the facts and how to treat those things and how to, what we should be doing, and just unbelievable education really. And that started my relationship with Mars way back a few years ago, and we're absolutely delighted that they're now the partner for the Dig podcast, and you're going to hear a little bit more about them today.
At Mars, we believe that an integrative approach to healthcare is key to supporting your overall health and well-being. Looking at our health as a jigsaw and considering a variety of different pieces such as sleep, nutrition, movement and stress management can be incredibly beneficial. Lifestyle choices have a huge impact on our health, and small changes can make a big difference. For more information and support regarding these key areas of your health, you can visit us online at mars.ie for blogs and content, or you can visit us on our social media, and of course our in-store teams are always on hand to offer expert advice. And don't forget that we also ship to Northern Ireland, and you can enjoy 15% off all full-priced items on mars.ie with the code DIG15. All orders are packed with care in our busy Dublin warehouse.
Thank you so much for that, Una. And now back to our guest on the Dig podcast. Do you remember on the phone
Of course.
Tell me.
Of course.
Tell everybody. Sorry, you've already told me. I know this because it affected me too, and me and you talked about that. But tell us about that. What happened?
So, I think there's probably a couple of stories that were very, very important in my journey, and one of them stories is when I started to put my face to social media. And when you put your face to social media, you're not just a brand. It becomes way more personal, because everything about how you present yourself is judged. That's just the reality of it. And initially what happens when you start to experiment, there's a bit of a kick you get off it. You know, the risk and the buzz in the tummy, and you're speaking to camera. But there's also the fear of, well, what are people thinking? And in one of our business meetings, I will never, ever, ever forget it. I was sitting in front of him and I told him about some of the videos, and he did, you know, I knew there was something coming, and he said, yeah, I've been told about some of this. He said, there's one particular, you know, or there's a few particular people who are in my network, or I know, or, you know, he was inferring they're people whose opinions that he trusted or that he placed value on. He said it's cringeworthy. He said it's not coming across well. And he said, again, I won't forget it. And he said, this person felt like you could have been or could be one of the most influential people in the space, akin to somebody like a Jamie Oliver, you know, with integrity. But this direction you're going, he said, I don't think you're going to do that. And it just shakes you to your core. It was a pivotal moment because I had a decision to make. You know, do you crumble and go, right, I'm going back to putting the mask back on and sharing how to hit 20 grams of protein? You know, here's a bowl of porridge, put some yogurt with it. And it goes back to, who are you? What do you want to be? What do you want to achieve? And I was like, fuck that.
Okay.
Fuck that. And I was like, I'm not hiding.
Whenever you said that to me, is that the time that you went to your daddy?
That was the next time.
That was the next time, okay.
Yeah, I talked to you about a couple of pivotal moments in my life. That was the first. You got a choice, as I said. Do you take that and sit back and just let it beat you down? Or do you just use it as fuel? And I don't think that you should always use negativity as fuel, but that certainly was a moment where I did. The next moment was after the release of, you go through phases, you go through stages, you move through, builds a little bit of resilience. I'm a big believer in grit and having grittiness in you and that fight. And I'll always go back to that, you know. The next, and as I said, it goes up in levels. The next level was, I released my book and it was doing extremely well. And it was doing extremely well. But yeah, this is a little bit painful because again, these are conversations. I realize it's going out to the world, but you don't ever talk about them. You don't. I'm not going to because I've dealt with it in the past. But it's important to understand that these are things that you experience. They form part of you, and then they ultimately drive you on. They make you stronger. But yeah, so the book was doing quite well, and you know, it was a bestseller. But I was in an environment where it's all about the team and it's not about you. And I was trying to judge. I was trying to balance this whole, I want to build a business. I want to get my message out there and what I believe in. There's this really positive influence. Talk about influence. People were eating better. People's lives were being improved by the food and the messages that I was putting out there, but it was also building my profile. And that there was a resentment associated with that. So I started getting a little bit of more negative feedback, and there was one particular moment. I don't actually want to go into any great detail about it, but it was another one of those really hard moments where I was told by somebody who was in a very powerful position within my environment, that people were talking about me behind my back, and that the book was portraying me, and these headlines, these positive headlines, were portraying me as just driving my own self-interest, and that was in conflict with the broader environment, I'll just say. And it was one of my, like, it was a really, really low point, because you're up here, you're feeling like something is going out that's really positive, and your family are really positive about what you're doing, and then someone just cleans the legs from under you. So the story I told you was, I went home and I had had this conversation, and there was other little bits and pieces where it creates that, oh my God, are people talking about me? Do they really think that this is what I'm about? This is everything that I'm not, that I'm being told I am. So I went home, and my dad was he was still in bed. I was down from Dublin, and he had the covers pulled up, and we just started chatting. I was at the door, and I told him, I wasn't planning on telling him any of this. We talked about the sheep, of a small sheep farm. We talked about loads of bits and pieces, and then I told him about, I hope I can get past this story, talking about something funny after this.
We will.
Let's
if you think we can.
Oh, I always get through this stuff, even if it's emotional. I always get through this stuff. But, and I'm actually, even in terms of emotion, as you get a little bit older, I'm not afraid of emotion, and I'm not actually afraid to put out this either. And the one thing I care the least about is what people think about me being emotional. So that's kind of interesting. That's probably why I'm no fear of going to this place. But he listened. I told him about this, and he said, Daniel, he said, if you truly believe in your message, you truly believe in this information that you're putting out there, then he said, this is bigger than you. This is bigger than those people. And it is ultimately about the message and the impact that has on the people, and what you want to positively implement, what you positively want to impact people with. And I have gone back to that every single time, even up until this week. Because you need a North Star. You need people in your life, but I talked about the self-talk. You need these anchors, like they need to be so accessible, because you will be hit every single week. It can be at different levels. And with my ambition, as you read out, I'll be hit again. And what am I going to go back to? You have to have it inbuilt. It has to be part of your armory.
So that what you just shared with us is so powerful and emotional, and there's everybody listening that has those stories, and that's why I so appreciate you actually sharing that, because people are afraid to talk about it, because it opens up again that spiral of attack sometimes, where they're like, oh, did you hear him or did you hear her saying, and why can they not take it? That's the space they're in. Like I would hear a lot, Daniel, like, well, they're in that space, you have to take the abuse, and that can really, like, I'm talking in the people I've heard and from my own life, it can verge on abuse sometimes from online forums, from messages. So this is really important conversation. Resilience within business, because we're all being active online, is something that can hold people back. And when you stop doing something you love because of what people have said, or what people are perceiving why you're doing this, you stop and then move on to someone else, and you're not doing your passion. So you help people with this. And I really appreciate you sharing. It's so emotional, especially to talk about your daddy. Because even when I talk about my daddy, and I still have my dad, I think about you not having yours, but the fact that he's looking down the day going, fair play, like he's using this as an example, and I was thinking of him. So thank you for bringing him into the conversation. I know it's not easy. But you've helped so many people and me. Like, I'll think of this the next time I get that message, or the next time I doubt because someone said something about me, you've had me. So just know that. Being on social media, so we've talked about that side. But the great side is the impact you're making amongst your community, the difference you're making. People are performing better, eating better, living better lives because of what you're doing. And that's why we do this. It's not easy showing up all the time consistently. Have you got any tips for people? Like, you're there, like every day I go on, I'm like, flip, there's another video he's doing. And you were talking about your yogurt on your toast, which is revolutionary. I was watching it. Like, you're showing there in your space. What tips would you have for the business owner that's listening for how important is consistency online for growing your brand? And any tips on that? How do you do that constant content all the time?
You're going to hate this, but I'm going back to your previous question.
Okay. No, I don't get it, because I thought like maybe I exhausted you with that. So, I don't want to, punch it.
Because the example I gave you was so emotional, it's awful important to talk about non-emotional skills and non-emotional tools as well, because people can connect a little bit easier with them. They're like, even my dad's story, like I can feel the gear change when I talk about other examples, and I can speak about them with great clarity. And that is, we talked about Sinead Brady and how amazing Sinead Brady is. Sinead Brady is amazing because when I told her about certain circumstances, Sinead is one of these people. She wasn't emotional and she didn't get sucked into my emotion. What she did was 1, 2, 3. These are the things that you need to do in those circumstances. You need to address these people. You need to challenge this. And regardless of how the outcome, you're addressing it for you. So those are within your own circumstances and own circles. If that happens, you have to address it, right? And that was really pivotal. What's the point out of that? Sinead Brady is one of these people that allows us to do that. We need these people in our lives. Somebody said something to me really important very recently. The people who can impact you emotionally and the things where we can really trust those opinions on a stamp. That's the number of names. It's a small number of people that should be let into that circle that can impact us in those spaces. And we need to know who those people are. Different stamps for different purposes. Okay, we've got our performance, our health, our medical, whatever it might be, emotional well-being, mental well-being. So that's awful important that we have that ability to deal with that. Your other question about showing up. When I think about social media, and I've said it already, is a creative outlet for me. Anything that you do in life, whether it be me asking you to do certain things with your nutrition or your sleep, they have to be connected to how you feel. You have to feel positive and good from them. Social media is exactly the same in my world. I have to feel like it's a positive representation of me and that it's connected to what I want to achieve. Is this in line with my values and is this adding value? So every single time I create a piece of content, is there a value in it for somebody? Not, is this selling what I'm doing? So if you come from a position of there's value in my message, it becomes so much easier. And the other thing is that you cannot force it. You just mentioned, and it allows me to perfectly segue into it, you mentioned yogurt toast. I had that as a snack yesterday. That formed a piece of content. So when I think about social media, all of the opportunities for social media are right in front of people all the time. So if somebody, and this happened last week, he makes kitchens, he's into cabinetry. The process around cabinetry and putting a kitchen together, he does it every day. It's fascinating. But he doesn't think about that as content. That's what we have to step ourselves. When you step into that mindset, it is honestly so simple. But we think what we need to do is create a script. And what we think we need to do is to create this really, like, if it's value, then, oh my God, there's so much pressure on it. No, what is your expertise? What are you interested in? What's fun? What do you want to share with the world? What's part of your message? What provides value? And that makes it so much easier and takes the pressure away.
Yes. And that's going to, there should be like so many light bulbs there, because people do think it has to be this like curated, big, like massive moment on social every time they come on. But like you said, but I was captivated by the yogurt and the toast yesterday, and she's saying you were doing it anyway, and you just put that out there because it was value and it was resonating with your audience. So getting people to think like that, like the kitchen man, I love that. You know, there's loads of people, joiners and all, like everybody, like everybody that does something, it's their skill, their expertise, and educate the people on it. You know, if you can do it in an entertaining way, great. But if it's just education, amazing. It excites me, and I know it doesn't. It makes fills other people with dread. But maybe this will help them think outside the box about it's not revolutionary here. It's your skill out to the world.
The thing about it in the beginning is that you do need to systemize it. I talk about systems and process all the time, even though I'm not systematic. I've become that way. So there's a girl at home in my local town she's set up this absolutely fantastic little coffee business from the ground up, it's called, and she's great, and she's adding layers to it all the time. But her social media has fallen away because she's so invested in making her coffee, and now she's doing food, and that's absolutely fantastic. And I said to her, I said, you have to recognize the value of the little things. So recognize the value in the change to the colour in, if you paint the door, that's a little update. You know, when you're walking in, you know, I'm actually delighted for myself. I've gone pink on the door. As in, you making a coffee, somebody is seeing you make that coffee for the first time. Don't put this huge pressure on yourself. This has to be cinematic. You know, this has to be this unbelievable production. It isn't. And I said, here's the other tiny thing that's so valuable. As in, I don't know when you're open. Are you open on Sundays? You know, tell the world that we're in on Sundays between 10 and 11. We'll be there for you if you want to. This is the information. I never even thought of that. I said, you put up that you were open on Sundays about 3 months ago. I forget whether it was Saturday or Sunday. And I'm scrolling through to go, was it Sunday? That's value.
Amazing. So simple. So simple about
Yeah.
Like this is it. This is gold for people that are listening. So it's all business audience listening, Daniel, you know, people who need actionable advice. Actionable there. Yeah. That is actionable. Yeah. And I'm going to do some of that myself. Like you lose your way sometimes in social, and especially with the podcast here, there's a big production behind you, but actually started off with just Zoom and a microphone that forgot to press record and all the things I've talked about before. But oh my God, I could talk to you all day, but I know you don't have all day because you're very, very busy. But I wanted to tell you that Mars Pharmacy are our partner, right? So you can't separate from business from life, and you know that, and I know that, and they're all about, you know, looking after ourselves, which was so appropriate for you as my guest. What do you do to look after yourself? I know you're obviously into nutrition and performance and stuff, but is there any key thing you do, and what advice could you give to business owners and people about looking after themselves?
I'm writing something around, as you said, my whole purpose is helping people find those winning moments. And I think the biggest thing that I help people recognize is that you actually cannot perform at your best if you're not investing in yourself, in your own health, in your own life, in your own sleep. And like, I've been talking about this for 8-9 years now, and maybe, you know, it's new to some people. We have pillars within performance and health that are our foundation, and these are all connected. So movement, sleep, mindset and nutrition prop up our ability to perform well. So when I'm coming in here to you this morning, I know that if I'm not hydrated and if my blood sugars are not maintained in a balanced way, I can't really deliver. If I've eaten too much food before we've sat down and something emotional comes up, what if I had something spicy or if I had something overly processed? You would hear my tummy. I would be bloated and uncomfortable. Again, not allowing me to be at my best and access the part of my brain that I want to deliver really well. That is ultimately what it's about. But people don't pay enough attention to how much sleep they're getting and the impact of that. Like there's almost this, it's a bit of a badge of honor where people say, I'm operating on 5 hours sleep. Yeah, you can, but you won't perform consistently well. Oh, I didn't eat breakfast today, or, as something important coming up. Well, hang on a second. Understanding your physiology a little bit more and recognizing your breakfast, stabilizing your blood sugars allows you to deliver in that presentation. We have to move for blood flow, for fitness. Ultimately, the fitter you are, the stronger you are, the better you look after yourself, the longer you're able to do what you love and perform consistently in day-to-day life.
We need to get better at this.
Yeah, and
small steps maybe.
Yeah, and then there's this one aspect. So you're all about actionable information.
Yes.
So you said to me, is there something that I do? I've been living this way my whole life, right? But in every pillar of performance, what we need is a minimum threshold. So that's the actionable information. So it's the non-negotiable actions, not, and this is really important, not our intention. Not I intend to go to the gym 4 days this week. Not I intend to cook my dinner every evening. What are you honestly going to do consistently, no matter how busy you are, no matter what chaos is in your life? That's what matters. That's the key element to this. So is it cooking 3 nights a week? Or is it, I'm extremely busy on Tuesday and Thursday. I need overnight oats in the fridge and I need my sandwich made, or I'm going to bring a portion of lunch with me in order to eat, so I'm not going to a petrol station or I'm not eating out. It's that awareness. That's a high performance lifestyle.
Okay, so there's a lot of things for people to think about. I think people are getting more mindful of it, that we can't perform at the level we need to in our work or our life if we're not. Sleep's a big thing for me, and that's something that I'm trying to work on in 2024, and I am really trying, and it is helping, but it slips sometimes. But I think it's just awareness, as you say, and putting things in practice. I could talk to you all day. Thank you so much. Like, it's so emotional, and that's life, and that's why we can't separate the Dig podcast from real life. But also so actionable and so lovely of you to come face to face. And hopefully this isn't the last time we have your friend Sinead back again. She's our second time in the podcast today, but recording later. But maybe I'll come back again and share some more actionable advice. But so good. And your TV star now?
No, I'm not a star.
I don't know.
No.
But you had a great opportunity.
I did.
Opportunity there with room to improve, wasn't it? So
yeah.
How did that go?
Yeah, it was. We were asked a question, and sometimes questions, when I don't feel like I answered them that well, or if I'm, in a certain state and I'm asked a question, but I was asked a question by the producer at the very end. What did I learn? I think it was a question I wasn't anticipating. Caught me a little bit off guard, and that's what's good for me to hear sometimes, or it's good to put me in that sort of position. And what I learned is that there are certain parts of life that we're not engaged in. I don't know how Wi-Fi works, or I'm not really that interested in the mechanics of a car engine or whatever it might be, and I wasn't really that engaged in my house renovation or my kitchen, but I knew I really wanted a great outcome. And what I learned is that there's a massive difference between really wanting something versus going to the place, doing the work to really understand what it is that you want, that represents you. And I learned that there's a lot of work that's needed. It's not going through social media looking at kitchens. It's not looking for inspiration. That's a load of bullshit. It's actually the most ineffective thing. It led me completely astray, because I was just looking at all these beautiful kitchens. It's irrelevant. You have a completely different budget. You live in a different country to somebody over in Canada with, 100
Open
feet walls, open air roof. Like, what's this bullshit? So, in fairness to Dermot Bannon, what he did was, what do you want? What represents you? And I guess the big story that came out of Room to Improve, the really emotional one, back to my dad, was that when he asked me, what is it? Like, strip all that, not what you want people to see, or, it was, I want natural materials. I like wood. I like stone. I like things that, but I'm also a performance nutritionist that feel like there's a strong feel. I like a bit of boldness. I like a bit of fun. So he said, okay, that's really interesting. I've got any examples. So I showed him a picture of a fireplace that my mother, an outdoor fireplace that my mother built as part of the memory of my dad. So every time I'm home, I like the fireplace. It's just in his memory, and it's a big thing. It's beautiful. So I showed him a picture of this fireplace. And he said, interesting, yeah. So as the show went on, I didn't know he was doing this. He said, do you think you could get some stone from home? I said, yeah, I think I could. So he said, then what I want to do is I want to cut the stone into tiles, and I want to create a splashback in your kitchen where you can have that memory and you can have that connection to home. And when we went through that process, I learned from the stonemason, like cutting the stone was just this extraordinary experience. Me going and get the stone, creating the story. The stone was incredibly symbolic. But then the stonemason says, the colour of that stone is impacted from the specific materials from your home. The soil, the moss. I say, oh my God. So then that's part of the story. But I never would have been able to bring that space and have that feeling and that connection to that space if I didn't go to that place that he was asking me about. So that's what I learned.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm doing my kitchen. I'm like, oh God, I need to get up to mummy and daddy's and see, because you're right. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But I wish maybe I had a thought more about that. That's definitely very deep and meaningful for your new home, and so amazing outcome from being on the TV show, and fair play to you for embracing that opportunity, because it can be scary to go into that kind of space when it's not your thing. Thank you for being on the Dig podcast, Daniel. Thank you to everybody who listened. Wasn't that so powerful and so actionable, all the things we want the Dig podcast to be? And
let me just say thank you. And I did feel like it was a good conversation. I can see, because of your warmth and openness and how comfortable you are to go to those places, it wouldn't have been the conversation without you. So thank you.
No, thank you. Oh my God. So there's that. Well, it is like whenever you're talking, I'm like I try not to jump in and be a good listener and all, but I'm in my head, I'm like, oh my God, that happened to me, or I really struggle with that. I'm going to do what he said. So I hope that people are listening like I'm listening to you, and they are. Thank you for saying that. Like that's the first time we ever ended off the podcast with somebody saying that to me, so that's lovely. And for everybody that's listening, we can't, like I'm sitting here in the Dillon Hotel in Dublin, and Daniel's here beside me, and we did start off on the podcast where didn't even press flip and record. So great things can happen, but it does take work, and it does take consistency and determination not to give up. And I'm not giving up, but I don't take it for granted when someone like Daniel comes and plonks themselves right down beside me. And I can't do that as well if people don't kind of follow the podcast online, hit subscribe, all them things that help the podcast grow. So if you're listening and you haven't done that, that'll be a great wee way to end it off. And thank you for listening to our episode today.